Good evening, you're watching No Spin, I'm Nidhi Razdan. Same old, same old. The Congress's Rajya Sabha list today reads like a Rahul-Priyanka loyalty list, with rebels from the G23 group like Ghulam, Nabi, Azad and Anand Sharma dropped. Within the Congress, there has been open discontent to date. To begin with, most of those nominated don't even belong to the states that they're nominated from. For example, you have Chhattisgarh, there's Rajiv Shukla who's from UP, Ranjit Ranjan from Bihar, they've been nominated from there. Ajay Markan is from Delhi, but he gets the seat from Haryana. Jairam Ramesh, thankfully, is from Karnataka. In fact, so is Mr. Chidambaram from Tamil Nadu. But from Madhya Pradesh, you have Vivek Tankha, who's from J&K. In Maharashtra, the seat has been given to Imran Pratap Ghari, who's from UP. And in Rajasthan, you've given it to Randeep Singh Surjewala, who's from Haryana, Mukul Vasnik, who's from Maharashtra, and Pramod Tiwari, who's from Uttar Pradesh. Perhaps the most glaring omission in the party's Rajya Sabha list was that of spokesperson Pawan Khera. He's worked on the ground in a number of elections for years now and is on television channels night after night, vigorously defending his party and attacking the BJP. He put out a rather cryptic tweet about these Rajya Sabha nominations before very gracefully congratulating his colleagues. There were, however, other Congress leaders as well who have tweeted their angst. Imran Pratap Ghari's nomination. The 34-year-old is an Urdu poet from Uttar Pradesh. He was appointed the Congress Minority Department chairperson last year. He fought in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections on a Congress ticket but came in third, getting just 60,000 votes. And that's again led to a lot of heartburn about just why. So did the Congress learn anything from this Chintan Shivar where it talked about giving younger people opportunities, giving newer faces opportunities? Tavleen Singh, columnist and author, joining us tonight. Dr. Nasir Hussain, Rajya Sabha MP from the Congress Party. Sanjay Jha, former spokesperson of the Congress Party, with us as well. Nasir Hussain, to you first. How do you look at sort of this Rajya Sabha list? Why are the same people being given these tickets again? Was this not an opportunity for the Congress to give newer faces a chance?
Nidhi, I agree that there could have been more new faces in the list of the Congress Party. But then at the same time, you should also understand that most of these people are there in the Rajya Sabha for the first time. They have contested election 3, 4, 5, some of them have won 8 times. And now it is time for them to be there in the upper house of the parliament. And upper house of Indian parliament is known for sensible debates, more deeper debates, more dignified debates. So all these people, those have been in MLAs, MLCs, MPs in Lok Sabha. So all of them, and with necessary experience and correct ideological positioning, we needed somebody to counter BJP's agenda and BJP's narrative.
But it could have been a mix of experience and giving newer people a chance as well. I mean, if you look at, for example, someone like Pawan Khera, who defends the party, who goes out and really takes on the government on TV night after night, why wouldn't he do well in Parliament?
Yeah, he would definitely do. See, Pawan Khera would definitely do in Parliament. When he can do well on the TV channels, he can definitely do in the Parliament. See, I'm spokesperson for the past, say, about 7-8 years. I have been a student leader for almost 10-12 years, winning 8 students' union election. But I was picked up after 18 years. Now, when I came here, I was one of the youngest Rajya Sabha members of the Congress Party, but 4 years back. So there are permutations and combination. It is not that Pawan Khera is not picked up, or Ragini Naik is not picked up, or somebody else is not picked up. We had very less number of seats, very few seats. We had to accommodate many people, those who had experience, those who are articulate, those who have clarity on ideological positioning, and those who can take on BJP in the upper house. So I think
you're saying it's to effectively take on the BJP in the upper house. Tavleen Singh, how do you see this? Because one gets a sense, though, that it's this sort of loyalty that's being rewarded again. It's really not a meritocracy as such. Although, yes, I mean, Mr. Hussain makes a point that you also do need experienced leaders to take on the government in Parliament. Couldn't it have been a mix of both, you think?
I actually have a totally different point to make. One, I object strongly to the fact that you have people from other states representing the state. This is the Rajya Sabha. It's the House of States. The people that go to that house should be people who represent that state. So, actually, for a long time, the Rajya Sabha has just been a house of, grace and favor. And, whoever was doing well in the court of Sonia Gandhi would get sent up there. And it's still going on in the same way. It's not about ideologically, and it's not about ideological positioning, because if all that they want to do is take on the BJP, why don't they do that in the Lok Sabha? In the Rajya Sabha, you really need people with not just experience. And, by the way, I want to say that Pawan Khera should definitely have been there. I mean, would have been at the top of my list. And, it's very, very inexplicable that he isn't there. But, there are people there who, I don't want to name names or anything, but who have no business to be in parliament, leave alone the Rajya Sabha. And we really do need Rajya Sabha reform so that you do not have people from other states representing a state that they do not come from.
I think that is an important point. Sanjay Jha, do come in here. What does this list reflect to you? That the Chintan Shiver was, what was it about then?
Well, Nidhi, as far as the city of Mumbai is concerned, where I live, I'm definitely disappointed because Mumbai is the cosmopolitan commercial capital of India. It's got not just the investment banking community, India's stock market, the film industry. It has also got, I think, the real microcosm of what an aspirational India is considered to be. And I tell myself that there are Mumbai, the BMC elections due, which, by the way, I think is as important as any state election. Maharashtra has been the Congress's formidable bastion for decades, although now it seems to be clearly crumbling or disintegrating. And I'm disappointed that Mumbai really hasn't found the kind of representation it needed. And I want to make a disclaimer here, very upfront with you, that Milind Devra happens to be a friend of mine. But I definitely felt that if anybody in Rajya Sabha had to be there today, it had to be somebody like Milind, who's been a twice-in member of parliament, is considered to be amongst the young Turks in the party, has been at the receiving end of electoral fortunes. I don't blame him so much for it as for, I think it's more to do with the political brand of the Congress party having dissipated. I think in neglecting Mumbai by giving it to this gentleman from Uttar Pradesh, the Congress really hasn't understood the electoral calculus. Because end of day, people want to see those people in Rajya Sabha who are actually going to give a more, shall we say, a voice to the party when it's needed to debate on national issues. And I think at this point of time, and I respect everyone who's got their seats. I'm sure there are various political considerations. And I'm sure with the Congress party not having enough bandwidth to make these accommodations, it is a tough balancing act. I concede that point. But at least where the Mumbai case is concerned, Nidhi, it's a blatant case of a lost opportunity. And I met people from Mumbai today who came and said, who's this guy that Congress has given a ticket to?
Let me take that to Mr. Hussain.
Never heard of him.
Because this Imran Pratapgarhi's nomination really has caused a lot of heartburn, Mr. Hussain. But there's a larger point, as Tavleen Singh pointed out, that almost everyone who's been given seats are people who are not from the state that they're given nominations from. Is that fair? Is that the right way to approach this?
Nidhi, I think you know for sure that it is not just the Congress party. In the past also, you take up any 2 years biennial election for Rajya Sabha, you will clearly have every party having some people who have worked in the organization for a long time from different parts. Nirmala Sitharaman is not from Karnataka, she's not from my state, but she's been there. JDU president of Jharkhand is being accommodated from Bihar. So these have been there on, I can give a long list of people representing other states. What is more important, whether they can do justice, are they experienced enough, can they work hard, and they can they represent the state and
but there is another point also. What about giving nominations to those from states which are going to the polls? That was another point that one of those who's disgruntled today has made. For example, I mean, you have the BMC elections, give a prominent Mumbai face a chance, or you know, other states which are having elections. That seems to have just fallen by the wayside. This seems like you're just accommodating loyalists.
No, it is not just loyalists. Do you think all these people don't deserve to be in the parliament? They have won elections in the past. I think except Mr. Jairam Ramesh and Vivek Tanka, most of them have contested 5, 7, 8 elections. Mr. Pramod Tiwari has won record 8 times. Ranjit Singh Surjewala has defeated the sitting chief minister twice. And all of them, Mukul Wasnik has contested elections 6 times and he has won. See, they are all experienced. They have worked very hard for the party. They have been working very hard for the party. As Sanjay Jha says, there's not enough bandwidth, there's not enough space for all of them to be accommodated. We have a government in Maharashtra. We have ministers in Maharashtra government. They should be the face of the Congress party in the election there. In Rajasthan, both Mukul Wasnik ji was in charge of Rajasthan for 8 years, and Randeep Singh Surjewala has been our frontsman for various issues there in Rajasthan. Definitely, they know in and out of Rajasthan, and they will definitely bat and they will definitely articulate the issues of Rajasthan in the parliament. See, what is more important is, do you want a sensible, dignified debate in Rajya Sabha?
But why do you think that younger people and other people can't be sensible and dignified? I'm a bit worried about what you think of the rest of your colleagues in the party.
Nidhi, there are younger people. Imran Pratap Gadi is 34 years. 34 years. Rajiv.
Yes, you parachuted him from UP to Maharashtra. We don't understand why.
Ranjita Ranjan is young. See, it's quite.
And he lost that election in 2019 by 60,000 votes. He came third. If you're listing out people who won elections 10 times, 8 times, 5 times, this guy lost. No, badly.
See, fighting and contesting elections in Uttar Pradesh is a different story, especially when there is lots of polarization there in Uttar Pradesh. But he has been working for the party for a long time, and he's
and so have so many others.
Okay,
but Tavleen Singh, if you had to sort of look at the big takeaway from this,
you should appreciate is, there is no one here who is 70 plus, 75 plus, 80 plus. They are all they are all 55, 60, 65 and all. There are not many young people like 30, 35 and all, only except 1 or 2. Ranjita Ranjan and I think Imran Pratap Gadi.
Okay.
But then it's a fair.
But Tavleen Singh, what is the bigger takeaway from this? Because you just had the Udaipur Chintan Shivar, right? And you're supposedly going to have organizational polls in a couple of months. What is the messaging that you're getting from this? That not much is actually going to change?
That they should stop having these Chintan shivers because they've learned nothing in the past 8 years. There's nothing that another Chintan shiver is going to solve for the Congress party. They have to really examine why they continue to lose elections. And this list for the Rajya Sabha, if Chidambaram has to be there, we know, and maybe Jairam Ramesh. But, the people who've really, as I say to you, Pavan Khera, when I listen to him on television, I actually think, maybe I should go out and vote for the Congress party. And he's been left out. And, Sanjay Jha makes a very valid point that from Mumbai, what was wrong with Milindura being chosen? So, there seems to be real confusion and, and really the Darbari culture that has been the ruin of the Congress party continues to be there, and it's going to continue to be their ruin.
Well, I'm out of time completely. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us on that big political story today. Thanks. Well, there is a geopolitical churn happening in the world at the moment. You have Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then we're seeing Chinese aggression, which is in particular affecting India. Former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran is out with a new book, How China Sees the World. It has just been launched today and is an important insight into how we can understand China's goals of dominance, of world dominance, and particularly with the problems that we are having with China, how we can deal with this as we move forward. Mr. Saran joining us now on NDTV. Thank you very much, Mr. Saran, for joining us. We're seeing a more aggressive and more assertive China today, and in your book, you've traced this to changes in the global order in the last few years, such as Trump's election and the chaos that followed, the fragmentation of the West during Brexit. As you said, China's no longer defensive about its communist ideology or that it's an authoritarian state.
So what I have said in the book is that the change really came about around the time of the global financial and economic crisis of 2007-2008. In the aftermath of the crisis, there were two trends which became very apparent. One was that the gap between China and the US as the most important, economic as well as technological superpower, that gap started shrinking. because China continued to grow at the rate of about 6% per annum after that crisis, while the US and the West in general continue to be beset with the economic crisis. On the other hand, the gap between India and China, which before the global financial economic crisis was actually shrinking. If you recall, the period, say, between 2003 and 2007, India was being actually touted as the new China. The whole concept of the BRICS came in, that these were going to be the very influential economic powers, emerging powers in the future. So the gap between India and China started expanding precisely at a time when the gap between China and the US started shrinking. And this dramatically changed the geopolitical situation, certainly from the perspective of India. And China began to see the emerging geopolitical landscape as an era of new opportunity for China. That China was now in a position really to begin to write the rules of the game. No longer was it necessary for China really to acquire to Western domination.
Well, related to that, Mr. Saran, you've also talked about how China has set itself deadlines to achieve global dominance, for example, in high-tech industries, and that Chinese leaders see the next 30 years as critical to the emergence of China as the world's most powerful country. Tell us more about that.
So they have the, China 2025 plan, which essentially has set out various targets for China to make progress in some key, areas of high technology, whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, information technology, aerospace, all the key areas which are high-tech areas. These are the ones which have been chosen for China to make a special effort to emerge amongst the front-ranking powers of the world. And as you know, today China, it is believed that is even ahead of the United States as far as, say, artificial intelligence is concerned. Take the face recognition technology, which they have been using, for example, in Xinjiang. It is much more advanced than what any other country has. So yes, it has set for itself a goal of emerging as the dominant power economically, militarily, as well as technologically.
There's also the issue of Xi Jinping's style of functioning, where he's deviated from Deng Xiaoping's policies. He's made the party, he's made himself the front and center of everything, essentially consciously building up a personality cult. So how much of a factor is that in how he looks at the world?
Well, every leader, and particularly a strong leader like Xi Jinping, would obviously make a difference in terms of the orientation of the country. But I would also caution in ascribing everything that is happening in China today as if this was only because of Xi Jinping and the style of leadership that you were talking about. Because, throughout history, and this is what I think the book also tries to project, that throughout history in China, there has been a preference for a strong central authority, a preference for a strong leadership, because it is in periods of strong leadership, strong central authority, that, there has been peace across the realm, there has been economic prosperity. It is when the center has been weak, leadership has been weak, that China has been fragmented and there has been economic distress. So overall, there is a kind of a preference for a strong leadership. And I think Xi Jinping has been able to tap into that we are living through a very, very, like he says, we are living through an era where we have not seen changes for almost like a century. This is an era of very, very transformational change. And in order to help the country to navigate this very, very complex kind of a geopolitical landscape that we are confronting, it is extremely important that we should have a strong leadership. So there is a certain, I would say, a broad consensus behind the idea of having a strong leader.
What can India do regarding the standoff on the LAC, Mr. Saran? The government is not as vocal on this issue as it is with, say, friction with Pakistan. Is this the right approach that India is adopting?
Well, I think we have to recognize that as far as I mentioned right in the beginning, that there is a rather large gap in terms of our economic and military capabilities. As far as, say, border infrastructure is concerned, although we have made several improvements in the recent past, the Chinese have done much better on their side. So even there, you can see a certain asymmetry. And whether we like it or not, we have to deal with that asymmetry. So to the extent that we have managed by a fairly, strong response to prevent any further ingress, yes, we have been able to, keep the Chinese at bay. But, it is a different matter altogether if we want to actually reverse some of the gains that the Chinese have made on the border. That would require a kind of a capability that I'm afraid at this particular point of time, I do not think that we possess. But yes, it is true that I think in terms of, matching deployment at the border, improving our intelligence in terms of, surveillance as what is happening at the border, I think there has been constant improvement. And therefore, the situation at the border is not as imbalanced as perhaps it was, some time ago.
We're also seeing China's economy slowing down. Its population is aging. There are strong headwinds in its rise to becoming the global world power that it wants to be. But India is in the opposite position, although we have our own economic headwinds. But is that something that India can use to its advantage in the next few years?
So I have argued that, we should really try to take advantage of what today is a time of geopolitical advantage for India, particularly after the outbreak of the Ukraine war. Because if the West is looking at what going forward is going to be the major threat that they are going to face, it is a Russia, but more importantly, combined together with China. After all, February 4 this year, you had the Sino-Russian joint declaration, which is actually quite dramatic in terms of what it suggests as the two powers working together. So I think there is an interest which countries of the West, whether it is the United States, Western Europe, Japan, who see India as perhaps the only credible countervailing power against China. And therefore, there is an interest in building up the capabilities of India. So for us, the best strategy is to try and take advantage of this geopolitical moment and bring about a transformation of India, because that is what we are looking for. After all, whether it is our diplomatic strategy or whether it is our overall national strategy, it is to bring about a transformation of India in terms of its economy, in terms of its technology. And today, despite the fact that the United States or Western Europe or Japan are seen in somewhat relative decline, they still continue to be the repositories of sophisticated technology, of capital, both of which India needs. So if we can create the right kind of environment and take advantage of what can be on offer with regard to technology and capital, this can be very helpful in transforming India and helping India in that way of actually being able to confront China more efficiently than it has so far.
You said that India has a better chance of meeting the China challenge by remaining committed to the values of our constitution, upholding democracy, celebrating our vibrant, plural culture and diversity. But we seem to be doing the opposite at the moment. Why is this so important?
Oh, because, I have argued again and again that, it is not that India should become more like China. India should become more India. That is, I think, what we require. And really, the source of our influence, the source of our international, status that we enjoy, is precisely because we are seen as a country which has been incredibly successful in managing what is immense diversity. And if we are living in a globalized world, which are the countries which are likely to succeed? They are countries which have, like India, a much more cosmopolitan spirit. A country which has much more openness. And this has been actually, traditionally what India has been about. It has had a history of, being open to the rest of the world. Maybe through aggression, maybe through invasions, trade or migration. But, India has always been very, very open, and it has become a country which is really the great advantage, the great asset it has is its plurality. And I think that is what you should leverage. That is what you should work on. So to that extent, I think remaining true to our constitution, to the constitutional principles that we have, that I think is going to be an important component of any strategy of bringing about that transformation of India that I was talking about.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Shyam Saran. Thank you for joining us. How China Sees India and the World. That is the name of the book. Thank you for joining us.